right. So the podcast that you're about to listen to is a fascinating guy by the name of Matt Landman. Now, he is the producer of a documentary called Frankenskies. He has another documentary coming up as well soon. He wants everybody to be able to see this movie for free. And so this movie exposes everything that we have maybe questioned, maybe was a little bit unsure about, everything that we've been told about the skies, about chemtrails, about some chemical pollution. He has been studying this for years and years. Now, he's also developed a line of clothing, EMF, and that can be found at speroprotectiveclothing.com. He has a few different places to find him, actualactivist.com and frankenskiesthemovie.com. Now, the topic that we get into with Matt and the conversations that we have, honestly, it lights up my soul. It is so inspiring to see someone that has taken their mission and their purpose and infused it into a business. And he really is all about helping humanity. So you're going to want to listen to this one. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us on the Activate and Illuminate podcast with Mel. I'm your host, Mel. Together, we're going to be diving into some stories of ordinary people doing a little bit of extraordinary things. People who've maybe pushed their bodies, their mindsets, or maybe society's paradigms. So you're going to find yourself maybe wanting to laugh, cry, or even be inspired. We would invite you to share, like, and subscribe, to sign up for our newsletter as well on activateandilluminate.com. Now, just keep in mind that this information that you are going to hear is informational and educational for entertainment purposes only. This does not constitute professional advice of any kind. The views expressed are those of myself and guests only. Listeners are encouraged to seek professional and legal advice regarding their own situations. So, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time, and thanks again for being here. Well, hello, everyone. So I am here today with Matt Landman. Now, I believe that his last name is appropriately named because from what I can see, Matt, you are absolutely out there as an activist for our land and for our skies. And tell us a little bit about what you're doing, the documentary that you've had out, some of your documentaries that are coming, and we'll get into this conversation of what you are so passionate about and protecting for us, and just bring some awareness to what you're doing as your mission project.
Thanks, Melanie. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you having me on. I'm an activist for life, and it's been my devotion. I've been devoted to activism, like I gave my life to it. It's now been about 12 years. I first moved to Vancouver, Canada, and day one in Vancouver, Canada, I met these activists. They were there for 9/11 Truth out in front of the art museum in downtown Vancouver. And they went out on the 11th of the month, every month, 12 times a year for decades now, to elevate the consciousness surrounding 9/11 and what happened there, which is important, especially for the youth nowadays that couldn't care less because they were like 1 year old or not born or whatever. So my journey of activism really began there in Vancouver, Canada. But prior to that, I worked on a farm in Northern California where I really woke up to weather engineering firsthand. And that's where it all was born, because when I got out in the world and researched geoengineering and learned about it and chemtrails and the secrecy thereof, when I tried to talk to anyone about it, they rolled their eyes. And that's what really got me. Like, it wasn't like that I had been fooled or that we're being poisoned or the land's being poisoned or whatever, all these things. It was that nobody was even willing to hear it because they were like, oh, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. And I'm like, no, I'm actually not that. Because I grew up like on the East Coast. I grew up right outside of Washington, D.C. and Northern Virginia and the suburbs of D.C. I grew up in the concrete jungle. I never knew much about anything, like farming wise and like things that we should learn. Like, I went through the public school thing and I laughed at horoscopes and crystals and astrology and all that stuff. And I never knew anything about anything. And when 9/11 happened, I was actually, it was all divinely orchestrated because I happened to be, so I grew up right near where all that happened. I grew up
Okay.
near Dulles Airport, where the planes flew out of. I'm pretty near the Pentagon, where the plane supposedly crashed into, all that sort of stuff. And I left and went to Virginia Tech, which is 4 hours away. But just out of random happenstance, synchronicity, I took one semester off and went to school at George Mason University, which is right in DC area. And I happened to be going to school and living back there when 9/11 happened, when 9/11 occurred. And at that time, I had a girlfriend, Christina, who lived in New York. And she was going to Pace University, which is right over, like looking out her window in her dorm, you could see the Twin Towers. And so I was really involved there emotionally. And it happened. I was actually up that morning trading stocks, and like all of a sudden the stock market was acting up, and my friend, like, whatever, my friend said something happened, you should go turn on the TV. That was when the first plane hit. But when I learned about that, how that was a big lie, because I was totally involved. I wasn't one of those people that was like, oh, this is nonsense, from, because you meet people that like say that they saw it at first and was like, this is BS. I was right there glued to the TV, like crying,
Yeah.
literally tears, because people were jumping out the buildings and stuff like that. And for a few years afterwards, I was still a normie, right? So like I didn't, like, everyone's like, oh, you must have had activist parents. And I'm like, not even close, not even close. We drank a big glass of tap water and 2% milk, it's like, finish your milk, finish your tap water at dinner. Like, I never heard the word GMO or organic or activism or anything. My dad did work in a union, and we did go on strike, and he was an airline pilot. He was actually an airline pilot. And when he passed away, when I was 27, I still wasn't at all very much awake. And I etched in stone, not personally, but I hired someone to etch in stone on his gravestone a plane with a chemtrail coming out of the top. I've never said that on the air. But either way, my dad has a tombstone with a chemtrail plane, thanks to me. And he was a pilot, and there weren't chemtrails coming out of the planes that he was flying, because I'm a firm believer it wasn't and it is not passenger jets, actually. But anyways, I woke up to 9/11, and that was it. I didn't know anything about the other things, and then my awakening was slow. And then when I learned about chemtrails, I was just offended for humanity, that we're so brainwashed, as a collective, myself included, you know? And when I tried to sound the alarm, like I said, people wouldn't even like give me the time of day. It's like going to someone in a war zone and being like, oh, hey, they're dropping bombs. You should probably walk on this side of the street. You might get hit. And then being like, you're a loon. I'm not going to listen to you, because that's not actually happening. And I'm like, no, don't you see the bombs dropping on the street? No, they don't see the bombs dropping on the street. Metaphor, of course. Well, by meeting these guys in Vancouver, Canada, these old timer 9/11 truthers, they really encouraged me to make the movie Frankenskies. And one of them even linked me with Bill Vanderzam, who was a politician in British Columbia. He rolled back this HST, this tax that everyone was getting. He ended up taking it away from the federal government was taxing everybody big, and he got rid of this big sales tax, I think it was, and he was a hero locally, I hear. So Bill Vanderzam, I went to his estate and interviewed him in the movie. And then later, when I went to bring him the movie, congratulations, you're in this movie that's done. The poor guy had Alzheimer's and dementia, which is from the spraying. It's from aluminum. It can come from a lot of things, but it's like, don't take the statins. Those statins are evil, and detox the aluminum best you can, and live a healthy life, mineralize yourself and stuff like that. And that's where ignorance is where these things breed. But he was aware, and he got dementia and Alzheimer's. And when I watched Frankenskies, the movie that came out in 2017, I'm like, that person's dead now. That person's dead now. Like, there's a lot of people in the film that were outspoken activists that aren't even alive anymore. God bless them. And there's a lot of things that I've learned since then. So I'm working on a sequel, Frankenskies 2 Climate Chains, like shackles. And the reason why it's called Climate Chains is because, of course, climate change is enslavement of our people. It's a big trick. It's this Hegelian dialectic problem reaction solution that they orchestrate through narratives surrounding different topics, whether it be the war on terror, or in this instance, global warming, climate change, catastrophe, and then the solution being dimming our sun with geoengineering, whereas geoengineering is the problem. The reaction is fear. The solution is then they give us the problem as the solution. That's how it goes. That's how it usually
Uh-huh.
goes. So they create the problem, and then they spoon feed us the solution after brainwashing propaganda. And in this instance, the solution is solar geoengineering, which should be so offensive to everyone on Earth, but it's not, because of the, Al Gore, and we're all going to be underwater, and the fear narrative surrounding global warming, climate change, and whatnot. I'll go on a really quick tangent, and then I'll pass it over to you. What's really fascinating about climate change is climate is defined as 30 years of weather. 30 years of weather is what climate is defined as. And when did the spraying really, really like pick up and really begin? They were sharpening their tools, but when did it really start? Like if you interview someone who's really been noticing, and a farmer or people that were like watching the skies in the 90s and whatnot, when did the tic-tac-toe board, when did these lines, when did this grid pattern really show up in our skies? Around 1995. So now they've been altering the weather around the world almost daily, with these programs, these spraying programs. They've been altering the weather for 30 years. So now the climate has officially like changed, but not in the way that they say it, And I mean, the climate's not really actually changed. It's just the weather is being manipulated on a daily basis, giving the illusion of a changing climate. So now, because of all their orchestrations, all the things that they've done, they're trying to feed us this solution now, which is being normalized slowly through the media and Hollywood and the different outlets. They're saying, hey, we've got a solution for you. It's geoengineering. And it's such a nice, big, fancy word that you don't need to think for yourself. Don't worry, basically.
Thank heavens. So tell me, from your research, when did those patents first come into play?
That's a great question. And for people that don't know, there's a whole slew of patents. I encourage you to look up on the internet, which you can use different browsers to not get filtered too bad. Like Brave is a nice different browser if you're not finding the truth on, the normal browsers. But these patents start in the 80s for modifying storms, increasing rain, making
Nice.
rain, and whatnot. So imagine a world where there's hundreds of patents, and I encourage you to go look up on your search engine 250 patents proving weather engineering, geoengineering to be real or true, whatever. There's varied articles out there about it, but the 250 patents is easy to find. I've got the patents available on my website, Frankenskies, Frankenskies, and there you can look at the patents. But imagine us living in a world where we've got drought, famine, fires. The fires are especially insulting. And then the media, which is where everyone gets their information, is like, oh, if only we could do something about this, we might have to herd you into a smart city and push you off your land because, climate change and carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is only 0.08%. 0.08%. That's not even 0.1%. So 0.08% of the atmosphere is carbon. If it went up, we'd be in good shape. If it gotten cut in half, we might all perish. It could go up fivefold and be like good for the plants and the world and food production and stuff like that. Carbon's not the problem. It never was. And they say it's the number one greenhouse gas. They haven't even done the research. You can just Google it. The number one greenhouse gas is water vapor. So if they really were worried about water vapor and greenhouse gases, and if supposedly those lines out of the planes are water vapor, which they're not, they say they're condensation trails. If they were condensation trails, and the fact is water vapor is the number one greenhouse gas, then those planes' exhaust should be scrutinized, instead of like bullying us and saying it's our problem and blaming cow farts and all this nonsense. So the patents go all the way back to 1890, and it was common knowledge in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Okay. Even in the 1970s, it was common knowledge that you could seed clouds, make it rain. I've got newspaper articles going back to the 70s that even this is so fascinating. Well, for one, Alberta was getting some crazy hail, and the government made the hail like reduced and small and did engineering of that in the 70s and 80s. And the farmers all knew and were thankful because the hail was messing their crops up. And then the government got involved and made the hail not.
Sorry to interrupt you, Matt.
No, you're fine. Please.
The first time I saw any of the patents on that was actually linked to an insurance company looking at some of the reasons that they had for promoting these weather-related events, and they were taking it as an insurance risk or basically as an insurance precautionary risk. And that was their excuse for geoengineering. And that was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that published. It was from a company in the US, and it was on a major insurance company's website. And it fascinated me. And this was just a few years ago. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
No, and that's great, and that's a great point, and it's very I watched a lecture recently of a man talking about the non-existent sea level rise and how it would be in insurance. It would be written throughout the mortgage industry, the loans, the insurance, like, oh, well, you live here, but in 100 years, your house is going to be underwater, so your property's not really worth that much money. No, none of that exists because the powers that be, they know that sea level rising because of global warming, because of ice caps melting is false, right? It should be all throughout. But what is throughout our patents on engineering the weather, hydrological dams, they use it and they'll fill up their reservoirs. Ski resorts will use it to get their snowpack. But heaven forbid Farmer Joe say something about the drought that's putting him out of the business. But back in the 70s, these newspaper articles, they articulated that farmers would even seed clouds with nutrients. So if, say, your crop is deficient in potassium, they could spray potassium up in the atmosphere and make it rain the nutrients that they needed. So we've gone from that knowledge to all of it being swept under the rug to now you're laughed at for talking about making rain. But in Vietnam, the Ho Chi Minh Trail was flooded by the US, and the United Nations had to come together and vote, and they voted unanimously that you can't use weather warfare because you're going to impact countries upstream and downstream and create chaos. So the world knew about it decades ago, but now it's just been silenced through control of information.
As you say this, I'm thinking back to a time where my husband and I were gone for a time, and I walked back into my house, and my mom has my kids at my table, and she's showing them a video on chemtrails, and I was like, really? Like, really? Like, I was kind of exasperated with her. I was like, do they need to see that at 6? But it was, yeah, I just kind of had that flashback in my memory now, and it's so interesting when you talk about media control and you talk about, I mean, the amount of people that don't even believe it is possible when I can physically see. I'm an avid sky watcher, Matt. I'm like, people call me derogatory terms because I've probably got like 1,000 pics a day of the sky. And here in Alberta, we have such vast, wide open skies. You can see exactly what's happening. But we can see what the weather's going to be like by what the skies are like today. We can see these things come in, and the amount of people that I talk to on a daily basis that don't even believe this is possible yet. Tell me, what has been your biggest battle as far as consumer, maybe consumer's not the right word, but as far as overall adopted beliefs and what you're trying to share?
Well, my biggest battle has been like they wouldn't do that to us
Yeah.
is the biggest battle because you're up against that level of cognitive dissonance, like where it's just not believable. It's just not believable. And really, if you go look outside and you're like, wow, let's do the math, and they're doing this all over the place. Like they're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars every like hour, every day for sure. They're spending millions and millions of dollars. And that's almost just unfathomable, right? I think it was J. Edgar Hoover quote that when the public is faced with a conspiracy so vast that it's out of the realm of belief, it just becomes unbelievable. Like
Yeah.
they can't even go there. And that's where we're at. So that, I mean, as far as getting to the public, getting to the people, and like, because when I first got going on this, I figured everyone was going to be like me. Like they'd be so interested and so appalled and all these things. But really, it's been like not mass adoption of the truth, which is what I figured it would be. I literally was like, I'm not going to cut my hair until I've stopped the chemtrails. And I literally thought that I'd be cutting my hair by now. Like I literally thought that the naivety, but also to kind of piggyback on your question, one of my also biggest issues with it all has been the degree to which the narrative and even activists are controlled. There's a lot. So the way it's a lot of topics like GMO, like you can go talk to just about anybody about GMO. Like go to the grocery store, talk to the grocery store clerk at a mainstream grocery store. and they'll probably know the word, and they might put you in a box, but they know what it is, and they can have a conversation about it. They might not know it means genetically modified organism, and they don't really know exactly what that means, maybe, but they've heard it, right? Chemtrails, though, like it's still, even after me pounding the pavement for over a decade and a lot of people getting involved and all this stuff, and this consciousness is rising, even still, you talk to like a normie or whatever, I hate to label people, but we're doing it. They won't even know what you're talking about. And then you try to explain it to them, and you've got two heads. And if, heaven forbid, they look up what are chemtrails, then they'll just put you in a box and be like, oh, you're just nuts. Sorry, you're just a crazy conspiracy theorist. So that's hard. But also, like, in trying to rally the troops and get people together and have conferences and rallies and do things, the military industrial complex, the power that be, the people behind this brain, they've done an amazing job at keeping it under wraps with controlling opposition by like having activists like look crazy, having everyone argue and bicker about what's real and what's not, having it really deep in like entrenched in fear. So like when you first come across the topic, right? If the first time you come across a topic, they're telling you that there's self-replicating carbon fiber nanotubes that are like alien based and they're being sprayed by spaceships and they're going to take over your body and you're doomed. You know, it's like they put it in this realm of just insanity and fear that it's so scary that people won't even look at it. And if you do, you get spun out on it and you're worthless. You're not going to be the best activist anyways, right? So they've done an amazing job on the psychological warfare, on the controlling the narrative of the topic. And that's been one of the biggest struggles, because you meet people that you think they're going to be on your team and you're going to rally together, and they're like not necessarily on board with you because of some reason, you know, whether it be they hear that like there's so much muddying of the waters. So there's a lot of that in this movement, which has been very difficult. And so it's important for people out there to honor the truth with the integrity that it deserves and to help it spread. And that's like boot on the grounds, grassroots activism, like just telling your neighbor about it in a grounded way. And that's why Frankenskies, the movie, is like historical. It's documented footage. Anybody can sit down and watch this film, is how I wanted it to be. And if you watch the first 15 minutes, it can be very eye-opening because it goes through the chronological timeline of weather modification history and how we got to where we're at. Because fathoming A to Z and trying to grasp where we're at now with it without knowing that it began 100 years ago plus, it's just too big to fathom.
So tell me where we are at. Like, from a scientific perspective, what are we seeing in our skies and in our water and such now that we didn't have before?
Well, from a scientific perspective, we've got investment out the wazoo. We've got ground-based stations. Like, first it was like HARP. Okay, HARP is an acronym, HAARP, and that was in Alaska. And a lot of people think that that's like the one thing still going on. There's so much more than that now. And HARP is an antenna array that electrifies the atmosphere in conjunction with the chemtrails to make them stay or stick, and to also make weather patterns. Like you can create a high pressure bubble or even a hurricane and stuff, which is with the HARP. But now that technology has been shrunk down, it used to be like 50 antennas the size of a football field. Each antenna is like 75 feet tall, and they're in conjunction, picking a focal point in the atmosphere and electrifying it, microwaving it. And that focal point in the atmosphere can be like even a couple miles, but they'll chemtrail it like crazy and mix different chemicals in the atmosphere and then zap them for whatever reason. It's like putting aluminum in the microwave. You can make it super hot. So they make the atmosphere super hot. Then they can steer weather patterns, steer jet streams, and all that sort of stuff. Now that tech has been shrunk down into these giant golf ball looking things called NexRad, or even Doppler radar systems. And the irony, they say they're predicting the weather while they're controlling it. So yeah, you can predict it. Well, if you control it, that's pretty easy. So these things are put on mountaintops, and I've even seen them in cities and what have you. And these big white balls inside them are radar looking antenna things that use intersecting radio waves in the atmosphere to microwave the atmosphere. So we've got infrastructure, and each of these things are like $30 million to build, and they're all over the place now. They're like on ships, so they're mobile. I've got one here in Mount Ashland, where I live in Ashland, Oregon. On Mount Ashland, I can like poke my head out and pretty much see it from where I live, and it impacts the local patterns. So that is a big piece of the puzzle is ground-based ionospheric heaters, they call them, microwaves essentially. And then the spraying being done by loads of like drones now. Like imagine after 9/11, pretty much unlimited budgets that Congress doesn't even have to sign off on because it's all like black ops. It's like there's there's a big gap in the funding. Like where's it all going? Who knows? NASA, for instance, has a budget of $70 million US per day. They have a chemtrail program called the Charged Aerosol Release Experiment, CARE, where they don't really care. So it's kind of a kick in the face. There's a lot of acronyms hiding different programs that are ongoing. There's SCOPE-X, Stratospheric Controlled Perturbation Experiment. There's SPICE, Stratospheric Particle Injection for Climate Engineering. There's TAP, Tropospheric Aerosol Program from the Department of Energy. It's really important, worth looking up as well. There's SRM, they call it Solar Radiation Management. There's SAI, Stratospheric Aerosol Injections. There's SATAN, the Stratospheric Aerosol Transport and Nucleation Program out of the UK. They just refer to it as Satan. We're going to dim the sun with the Satan program, blocking the light, turning it to dark, and they're calling it Satan. It's the irony. It's really sad. So to answer your question, activists have to step up and do rainwater analyses, because we're being lied to left and right. So people have come together over decades now, and when the skies are perfectly blue, and then there's a storm system coming in, and then 20 planes show up that aren't passenger jets because they're zigzagging the sky and who knows what they're doing, and they're leaving these persistent linear cirrus cloud formations, geoengineering, chemtrails, whatever, aerosol deployments in the clouds, and then the clouds like drop rain. People can test that rain, and then they just happen to match up with the constituents in the patents and in the programs, like the Charged Aerosol Release Experiment from NASA. They say we make noctilucent clouds, we spray aluminum, barium, strontium. They admitted. So this is like become like the narrative. It seems like they're spraying that. So when you test your rainwater, you have to tell them what they're testing it for. You can't just say test it for everything, right? I wish you could. So you say, okay, I want to test it for biological contaminants or whatever, aluminum, barium, strontium, lead, magnetite, lithium, terbium is a really random weird one that's coming up, which is very fascinating, which we should talk about.
What
so
is
there's
it?
a lot of let's talk about it right now. So terbium is showing up in remote places in the rainwater after really heavy chemtrail days, and rain comes down. And TERBIU, it's a very, very expensive rare earth element that's mined in China that's put in 3D plasma television screens. Okay. Why would 3D plasmified, rare, very expensive, rare earth elements be being sprayed in the atmosphere? Well, for one, we've experienced northern lights looking different than it usually does. Northern lights usually is like moving and has this like fingerly like moving thing. And you've probably seen it where you live. This now like plasma haze that people are posting on the internet saying, "Ooh, I saw the northern lights down in Florida." I don't think so, right? It's like, I don't think so. They're actually spraying chemicals in the atmosphere, electrifying them, plasmifying them, making a light show, and then having people be like, "Ooh la la, I saw the northern lights." And that narrative to me seems like it's going in a direction, like all these different psyops, you got to read the writing on the walls, like where are they taking this? And it looks like that the powers that be want to get people worried about an increase in solar flares. Is that actually happening? Possibly, but I see the sun as like totally different, and maybe it's trying to uplift consciousnesses. Maybe it's reacting to us being dense and stuff like that. I don't see the solar flares as knocking out the grid, but what the powers that be want us to think is the solar flares are getting intense and they're going to knock out the grid. Okay. And guess what the solution to that could be? Dimming our sun with chemtrails. So I see a potential dystopia emerging where this narrative continues, where, oh, wow, the solar flares are getting so crazy that now we saw them in Puerto Rico or whatever. And, oh, the sun's going to emit this big solar flare. And then we get hit with an EMP, or they just pull the switch or whatever it is, where we lose power, we lose our social media for a month, a week, a day. What's enough to make people crazy and do anything for it and be like, okay, yeah, block my son, sure, go for it. I think about a week off of social media and people will accept anything to get back on. And then they could also be like, oh, well, to get back on, you need a digital ID. So that's like part of the maybe dystopian reality that we live in. But there are heavy metals being sprayed and a lot of them are weird. And so people ask, well, how can I detox from this? And this is going to be in my next movie, Frankenskies 2, Climate Change. Like I said, you can look out for updates about that on frankenskies2.com. But I'll be working it out. We'll hear that it's out when it comes out in the fall and the winter. I'll be really pushing it around and trying to come back on here and promote it and all that sort of stuff, because that's my job. And I really want people to see this next one. The next one's going to have a lot more solutions for people and what we can do. And one of the most important things that we can do regarding like detoxification and chelation, chelation being a word to pull heavy metals out of your body, it's CHELATE, to chelate. And you can do different things to chelate. And I recommend consulting naturopath. You can get your blood tested and see what you've got going on and try to lessen the level of metals in your blood and stuff like that. There's things you can take like chlorella, spirulina, and whatnot. But I think the best thing we can do is mineralize with bioavailable meaning plant-based minerals. Okay. And so there's about 120 minerals that we need on a daily basis. Every day, our body burns through about 120 minerals. 120, that's a lot. Like, I know we can't list off 120, like magnesium, calcium, 120 of those things. So one of them on that list is trace levels of einsteinium. They're not putting einsteinium or gold, which is on that list, or platinum, palladium, silver, aluminum. It's also on that list. These trace levels of bioavailable minerals, they're not being put in our soil. Our soil is deficient. It only takes basically nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium to grow food. You don't need to put gold in your soil, and they're not doing it. The soil's been beat to death and it doesn't have the gold like it used to, or whatever, all these trace minerals. And so because we're mineral deficient, we don't have all these minerals in our system. Because we're mineral deficient, our bodies are walking around like sponges. Okay, well, I want to get up to speed on all these minerals. I'm burning through all these minerals on a daily basis. Imagine that. And you're not getting them. Okay, so I've got a supplement that I found that's just, you can find it anywhere. It's like, I'm not promoting any brand or anything like that, but it's CMOS, which is like 90 minerals and it's bioavailable. And I try to find it wild crafted because it can be like grown in a swimming pool, evidently. So wild crafted CMOS, bladderwrack, and burdock. And these three things get ground up into pill form. They sell them all over the internet, Amazon or whatever. And like, people ask me what brand, and I switch it up. I change brand. Maybe one's maybe not that great for me. So once I'm done with that bottle, or if I have a brand I don't like, I just stop using it. But I switch it up, but I find wild crafted, bladderwrack, burdock, bladderwrack, burdock, CMOS. Yeah, CMOS, the most important one. So those three together, they have all the minerals that you need. Like, for instance, CMOS doesn't have the iron, but the bladderwrack has the iron. And burdock is a root. It cleanses your blood. It's good for you. Bladderwrack is also a seaweed. So bladderwrack is a seaweed. CMOS is a seaweed. All these things together have all the minerals that you need, and they're plant-based, they're bioavailable. You get them in your system on a daily basis, and now your system is like, oh, I've got these building blocks that I need. I don't need to be a sponge. I don't need to be absorbing toxins from my toxic environment, from my tap water, from my air, essentially is where you get most of your toxins. So by not being a sponge, you're leveled up and you're not absorbing aluminum from the air. But you're walking around and you're deficient in those trace levels of plant-based micro levels of aluminum, which we actually need. Little bits of the plant version, not the heavy metal version that's being sprayed. So by being up to speed on your minerals, you're not walking around like a sponge, but everyone's walking around like a sponge. So we're absorbing all this stuff into our body and then trying to figure out how to get it out. Also, lifestyle choices. Like, of course, there's aluminum in your deodorant. Read your ingredients. Read your ingredients on everything, and don't, subject yourself to that, please. There's other options. So that's my little spiel on that. I hope it made sense.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about, on your website, now you've developed some products and you've developed some other solutions. This was one sentence that really stood out to me. So the entire drive behind the conception of the company is my desire to firstly protect children and pregnant women from EMF radiation. And this was with your company, Spero Gear, and am I saying that right? Spero or Spero?
Spero,
Okay.
Spero. It's like a Spanish Latin word, yeah.
Tell us about that, because when I read that, honestly, I got goosebumps just about the importance of what you are trying to do, not only in your activism and in sharing, the messages, but also in creating solutions for people. So tell us about that and just what precipitated that and how that was born.
Thanks. And of course, and as an activist, you learn to wear many hats, right? Truth is a frequency, it's a vibration, it's a resonance, and it's not something you can cherry pick. I used to have a mentor, a friend that was one of those old timer 9/11 truthers in Canada and Vancouver that I met. And he would always say, you can't be half pregnant with the truth. Either you're all, you know,
so, so
you can't be
true.
half pregnant. Like either you're pregnant or not, right?
Yeah.
Like either you're pregnant or you're not. And you can't just be like, oh, well, I, eat organic and I know about the chemtrails, but all those other conspiracies are crazy. You can't cherry pick. So with truth being a vibration, I firmly recognize that as you elevate your vibration to the resonance of truth, other truths live on that frequency and they start to become self-evident. So eating right and all these other things, you start to realize there's a lot of things here, and we're like bombarded by lies. So like the world's upside down and you start to really resonate in the truth. It's not your truth either, which it's not like that. It's the truth, realize. So I started learning about 5G. Everyone was talking about it. And I was like, oh, what's this? What's this everyone's talking about? And I was actually in the midst of being injured by my smart meter. So it was like perfect timing. It's probably divinely orchestrated. I was working on Frankenskies day in, day out, and sleeping next to a smart meter. And after about 4 months, I was electrically hypersensitive. Like I couldn't hold my cell phone in my hand. I would get like a jolt. I would get like shocked. My heart hurt really bad. I had heart palpitations, and I couldn't sleep. And then in like a jokingly way, my landlord was like, maybe it's that new smart meter they put in. And I was like, oh, where is it? It's like about 3 feet from where your head lies in your bed. I'm like, oh, interesting. And I started doing the research. So I learned about smart meters, electromagnetic frequencies, EMF radiation. And wow, what a rabbit hole that was, because it's just like right there. It's invisible, but it's right around. We're in a soup of it. And so I started diving into it in depth, learning about 5G. This is like 2017, 2018, 2019. And I slowly but surely learned that there was a fabric out there that could block 5G. And at the same time, I was going to city hall meetings talking about like, you shouldn't put up all these 5G antennas and whatnot. I was in Arizona and then in Marin, California, Arcata, California, Southern Oregon. I was going around to these different city hall meetings in the Bay Area, San Francisco, and I was speaking at these anti-5G gatherings, rallies kind of thing, like city hall meetings that were like talking about zoning and how they're going to roll out small cells and 5G all over the place. And when I learned about 5G, I literally had to like go to a library and dig in books and stuff, because that's actually a thing still, because like the internet censored information wasn't really giving me what I needed. I'm like, but what is it? What is it actually doing? And why is it like hazardous?
Is it
G
being
radiate.
sorry to interrupt. Is it being do you see 5G as being also a tool or accentuator of the chemical spraying?
Yeah, that's a great question that I hear a lot. Are they related? And yes, they're very much related. Yes, they're related. I've seen even documentation saying that metallicized like sky is more conductive for frequencies. So the 5G is kind of doesn't make any sense. It's a very ignorant way to approach telecommunications. It's a genius way to approach depopulation and weaponization of frequencies. But as far as like, I'm going to text someone something or whatever and utilize it as a means of communication, it's archaic and it makes no sense at all. It makes no sense. The carrier wave like absorbs into trees and leaves and water droplets, and they say that it only goes about 500 feet, really, like when they really ramp it up. When the carrier wave is down to about a millimeter in size, they say it doesn't even travel hardly but 500 feet. So they need repeaters everywhere. And now mobile node repeaters are the cell phones. So the cell phones have become repeaters. So the 5G phones, also 4G LTE. LTE stands for long-term evolution. It just means 5G, basically, like it's going to evolve in your pocket, become 5G in your pocket. The 4G phones and the 4G LTE are part of this infrastructure of this like web of it all, where it's all piggybacking off of each other and creating like a mesh network. And it's nothing like its predecessor 4G, where it's trying to just communicate with the tower. It's pushing the signal to the next closest thing in this
And
Internet of Things. And then that makes the thing in your pocket like a mobile node or a little cell tower. You're walking around with a cell tower in your pocket, like the 4G towers. So when you learn about the carrier wave and the carrier wave size and the technology of the millimeters, the wave is measured in millimeters. Some of them are like high band, low band, mid band, and those are measured in millimeters. The low band, I'm sorry, the high band is like 1 or 2 millimeters in like height, or however you want to describe the waveforms of the scope of the radiation. So when you learn about this and you learn about like, wow, like AM radio waves are really large. They're like 100 feet, and FM radio waves are really big. They're like 10 feet. And Wi-Fi is actually pretty big in comparison to 5G. And so is 4G. All these things are large and go through things. They go through us. But the carrier wave of 5G, it absorbs right into us and it decimates reproductive organs. It's just designed that way. It's so small that it makes people infertile. One thing that was shocking that I read is at the amount of at the amount of hertz, the amount of waveforms going by and the size that it confuses women's eggs at a very young age, because these children are being born into this environment now, and women only have so many eggs that they're raised with. It confuses the eggs to think that they're getting hit by a sperm, and so they harden. So these children are growing up with hardened eggs, and they won't be able to have children and being conceived, born, and raised in a 5G environment. So it also decimates sperm count and what have you, but learning about how the waveform actually is small enough that it imitates a sperm. And when when one sperm gets in, the egg hardens and then it starts to work itself into a child. It's replicating that process. So that's just demonic, right? And to think that that's where we're at in technology, that's why I said that in that statement, is the education, the awareness, and the shielding and protection. It needs to happen, but especially the awareness. So every time that I get a product out there, which I've got like 45 products, every time like someone gets in the mail texting gloves or a beanie or something, you better believe that their spouse or their child or their neighbors is like, what's that? Like, oh, I got silver lined XYZ because of this impacting thing that's all around us, this cloud of, and then also, you want to protect your fertility and the newborns, and especially, get baby blanket, da 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 da. It's informing people of this thing that's happening. And I couldn't see any other way to do it. Plus, also, Chemtrails wasn't paying the bills, and I wanted to be an activist, and I wanted to continue on with my activism, but somehow, make money being an activist. And I wasn't going to charge people to watch Frankenskies or whatever, but I learned that there was a fabric that could block radiation. And literally, I took my savings, put it in a fanny pack, and got that fabric, which was a copper fabric at first. And I flew to Southeast Asia with all my money. And I was just like, I'm going to figure this out. I don't care. I'm not going back to the Matrix world. I'm not going to go back and work a normal job. I'm going to be an activist. And my career is also going to be activism, protecting people, shielding people, and educating people. And so I went to Thailand and I learned how to say fabric made of copper, pa tordai tong dang. And I went to all these markets. I went to all these markets with this copper fabric, and they would grab it and they would say tong dang, which means copper, and look at me like I'm crazy, because there was no copper fabric in Thailand. So I made my way to China, where this manufacturing process only exists in China. And I learned copper's not the way to go. It's too conductive. It needs to be grounded, but you can like make drapes. You make like curtains out of it and stuff like that. But altogether, there is an industry in Korea, Japan, and China, and it's been going on for quite some time. And they protect especially their pregnant women with pregnancy wear and all this stuff. And they make woven steel and woven silver clothing for pregnant women. And it's a whole industry over there. And like when I talk to people, they're like, it's law. I don't know if it's law, but they think it's law. So it might as well be law, because communist China does not want women giving birth to like autistic children and stuff like that, because it's a strain on the system. Over here, we don't care. It's like customer for life, capitalism, like yay. But over there, interestingly enough, it's like law that in your last trimesters, you have to wear EMF protection, like aprons. So, wow, and in the West, we think we're so advanced, but we have no clue what we're dealing with here. So I firmly believe that getting back to like getting grounded, getting into nature, like getting like to the Amish lifestyle kind of thing is going to be the way that we need to like have our eye on, because we're facing digital currency, digital wallets, all that's going to have our immunization records on it and all this sort of nonsense, and all that comes with the smart city. We have to start realizing that it's up to us to build a perpendicular parallel society. And it begins with like being able to conceive children, and teaching them well and raising them with the torch that they deserve and letting them be torchbearers as well.
Yeah, do you think what we are seeing, like I liken it all to a spiritual attack on humanity. You know, you said the word demonic to when you were talking about the eggs, but I guess that's a whole nother conversation. This idea of silver, we've seen silver used in supplements, used in ground sheets, used in all different kinds of things. Tell us what kind of products you have, Matt.
Well, thank you for that. And it is a battle of light and dark.
It
It is
is.
happening.
Yeah.
It's happening, and we've been called to serve and help bring forward the light, and it's trying to get snuffed out, and it's happening right before our eyes. Even like with the chemtrail agenda, it's like literally they're trying to block out our light. So denying that is ignorant, and it's important that we do bring that up. And I'd happily do a whole show on spirituality and where we're at with that, because we are there. It is a spiritual war, and we are in the midst of it. And so many people don't even realize that their feet are on the battlefield. Like they're in the midst of it and they don't even know. For other products, and thanks for asking, I have blankets for adults and children and whatnot. I have texting gloves. Are the best texting gloves in the world, and people have like buzzing in their hands holding their phone and whatnot. And these texting gloves are nice for that. I've also got blue light blocking glasses. Blue light, I see it as like the cigarettes of this next generation, like the impact that blue light has. It's emanating from all of our devices. Like we can't see all the blue light that's pulsing off of it just because of the way that our eyes are shaped and whatnot. But there's loads of blue light coming off of our devices, our television screens, our monitors, and our phones. And it disrupts our circadian rhythm and our biology. And it's really slowly impacting all of us, especially like teen depression and all these things, and serotonin levels, melatonin levels. And what's really fascinating is testosterone. Testosterone's only produced at like 3 a.m. And when we're throwing off our circadian clocks every night by looking at our screens at like 9 p.m. or whatever, our bodies never even know when it's 3 a.m. Sorry. Testosterone is produced at 3 a.m. I'm not sure if I said that. So in the middle of the night. And so in the middle of the night, our bodies need to know it's the middle of the night, and our bodies don't know it's the middle of the night. So we're not producing testosterone, and it's being thrown off because of the circadian clock and blue light. And that's a whole nother show as well. But it's important for people to grasp that and understand that you can get like blue light filters on your screens, and that helps a little bit. And blue light blocking glasses, I highly recommend. What else do I carry on my site? I do incandescent bulbs, which is a whole little rabbit hole thing right now. And blackout like phone bags and blackout boxes, like Faraday boxes and stuff, where you get like no signal at all, no contact tracing, no nothing when they're inside the bag. So people love that privacy. T-shirts, maternity wear, boxer briefs for men, and yeah, you name it. I try to carry it all, really, like lots of different beanies and hats and styles and what have you. And it's a growing industry, this realization that we need to protect ourselves in this soup of radiation. So I'm really excited to be one of the front runners of the industry. And I see myself as leading it in North America, and I'm really proud to be there. And I think it's really inspiring for others, because it's like, look, I checked out of the matrix. Like I literally I've worked like 45 different jobs. I've worked in restaurants, hotels. I got a master's in business administration. I worked in finance. I worked in stocks. I've worked in real estate. I've worked in a lot of different things, like so many different jobs. And I learned how to get out of the matrix and actually have my own business that is doing me just well. And it's also activism, which I encourage everyone to like think about what they could do in that light. I was on a local radio show just this morning, and we were talking about this gas station in Northern Oregon called Sequential that is all organic. And they've taken the gas station model and flipped it on its head and been really lucrative with that. So there's opportunities in this rising consciousness, awakening world where you can still make money, but sell out.
This episode brought to you by protanumcanada.lifevantage.com. What if you could turn on your body to work like it was supposed to? What if you could have it remember how to handle toxins, stress, and the environment like it used to when you were young? What if it worked for your pets too? What if this is not about supplementing something that is missing, but activating something that has gone dormant? About actually turning on your body to make these things again. Learn how to activate your body now. Check us out, protandemcanada.lifevantage.com.
Love that concept, Matt, because I think so many people, they're like, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? They may have these passions. They may have this. You probably didn't see this whole story and scope of where you are now when you first loaded up your fanny pack with a few bucks and ran to Thailand. But that passion and that mission was already born in you, I'm guessing. And so many people have these ideas and they just think, or they don't give themselves the allowance to be able to participate in their dreams in a big way. And I love that you are being an example for not only following your mission and your path, but also standing up. I want to talk about this idea of activism because, I think people get scared by it. I think as soon as you actually said the word activism on this show, there was something that happened in me. Like I was like, and I think people get scared by it. And first of all, it's been branded as no longer being patriotic, but just flipping crazy. It's been branded as, if you're an activist standing for something, not only does it come at personal peril and personal risk and possibility of cancel culture and all these things that we've seen over the last while that we didn't even know were possibilities 20 years ago without the internet. But let's talk about this idea of activism and kind of where it has gone, because even in my own head, and I 100% agree with what you're sharing and saying, in my own head, when you say the word activism, something happens in me that's like a little bit of a warning bell.
It's been hijacked, and I've created a website, Actual Activists.
Okay.
For a number of reasons. Actualactivists.com. And that's a one-stop shop for truth. The reason why I made it was someone who I looked up to for a while, but then I learned I don't trust. They told me, stick to chemtrails, Matt. Stay in your lane. And I was like, you can't be half pregnant with the truth, man. You can't. I'm not just going to be the chemtrail guy and not talk about health because chemtrails are impacting my health. I'm not going to be a chemtrail guy and not talk about EMF radiation because the EMF radiation, it breaks down the blood-brain barrier, allowing the chemtrails into your brain. They're intrinsically they're interconnected. They're very interconnected, like all of the truths. We could talk a lot about like how the towers that they impact the chemtrails as well. It's like they're all interwoven. So actual activists is like, for one, it's going to be all the truth, and it's like actual activism, not going to feed you full of lies. And if anybody finds like a misprint or a lie on my website, please reach out to me. I get shamed on Facebook all the time, and I love it. And then it changes me. Like I was like quoting Mahatma Gandhi, and then someone was like, did you know he was a plant from the UK, from England? And I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. It just makes perfect sense. He got everyone to just like lay down and starve to death or whatever. That was their activism. Hijacked activism, though. Perfect example, right? And so nowadays, activism it's hijacked. It's hard. Yeah, me saying that I'm an activist, people get in their head, oh, so you're like laying down in the streets because of ICE protests or whatever. And like, I'm like, no, that's like a very deep psyop to divide and conquer and turn it civil war. And those people are sheep to an agenda. They're not real activists. They're not actual activists, right? And then they're like, oh, so then you're this over here and you're doing that. And I'm like, no, those actually aren't actual. So when you say the word activist and people get in their head this one thing, it's actually something that's been programmed from the TV and what have you. And it's not what actual activism even is anymore, because all these movements have been co-opted. So it's hard for people to believe. Yeah, right. So I will. 1 second.
Sorry.
It's hard for people. No, I appreciate it. I love you. I just want to finish this thought. It's hard for people to grasp, but like in the 60s, the Black Panthers were a threat to the US government. Like Black Power was a thing, and they were scared. So they created this internal thing called COINTELPRO, where they're going to infiltrate the Black Panthers with agents that are Black, pretending to be Black Panthers, and then break it down from the inside out through feuds and embezzlement or whatever, like you're going to make it fall apart from the inside out. And then eventually, like, the Black Panthers fell apart. And in other movements, they're infiltrated. What actual activism means to me, and what it means in this day and age, means honoring the truth with integrity. And that's hard because there's so many psyops and there's so many narratives. And so to honor the truth with the integrity that it deserves, it means like, well, start with like, what truth do you know? Like, well, we got to learn how to grow food and forage and teach the children well and not raise the kids on screens and all this stuff. Well, that's activism already, because you're protecting the next generation and teaching them well and showing them the way, you know? Like I don't say I'm an activist and then go hand a tablet to a 4-year-old or whatever. Like I sit down with the 4-year-old and I take them out. Even if it's not my kid, I'm teaching them like different plant identification skills and how to plant a seed. I met a teenager the other day that didn't believe that a pumpkin seed grew pumpkins. No, pumpkins come from the grocery store, Matt. I'm like, okay, let's sit down and have a conversation here. Seeds do XYZ, right? So there's different forms of activism, but activism in its real truth is not being in alignment with falsehoods and psyops and psychological operations and mainstream narratives that are controlled and whatnot. So that's tough. So like, for example, during the lockdowns, I wasn't really all over the TV because I was bouncing around and you know, I knew that people were really reaching out to me in droves. Is this real? What's going on, Matt? And I was like, oh, I got to now tell you. I don't even know. So what I did was I went and I got centered and I sat down with my chickens. Literally, I got a chicken, put it in my lap. I sat down and I got centered and I was like, is this total BS? And like, I felt resonance that it was just total nonsense. And I was like, okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Because like no one's like really dropping dead or anything. And they're like, you know, big power grab or whatever. And so that was like almost immediately when it was all happening, because people would ask me. So then I had the answer. They didn't want to hear that answer. It's all BS. They wanted to hear that it was a lab leak and all this sort of stuff. But then I drove up to Northern California and there was a protest of supposed activists and they all had these signs, I can't breathe. You're in Canada. I don't know if you caught wind of all this, but either way, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And I'm like, oh, wow, my tribe. I get all excited. And then I noticed they're all wearing masks. And I'm like, wait, what? Aren't you protesting the masks? You've got to be with those signs. They're like, no, George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. And he said, I can't breathe when he was getting choked by the police. And I was like, what? And that's too perfectly timed. And then they're like, you can go to protests, but you can't do anything else. So their rules only apply, like, didn't apply to like people gathering to protest in Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, okay, well, that's obviously a psyop too. And that's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings, you know, that's a psyop, but it is the truth. So it's like, I can't just cherry pick truths to not hurt people's feelings, you know, which the whole ICE thing is also very obviously co-opted as well to get to like serve a purpose. Like when you see these things, you got to think to yourself, well, what purpose does this serve? Who does this serve? Where are they going with this? You know? And then you can see, oh, maybe Trump wants to like create, you know, something where he can do martial law and not get out of office or whatever. Like there's pretty logical things. It makes sense when you start to literally look at it from a logical perspective. Activism is being in alignment with real truth. And that's like a tough pill to swallow for people nowadays, because real truth seems to be subjective, but it's not. I don't even know if I've got the right word for subjective, but it's not subjective. It doesn't matter who it's coming from or what it is. The truth stands for itself. And so honoring the environment, honoring the land, honoring the sky, honoring the truth for what it is, which is there's an agenda, a satanic agenda at hand, dimming our skies. You know, so I represent in my field, like if you go to actualactivist.com, it's got the shots, it's got GMO, it's got health, it's got chemtrails, all of the tabs. But then there's a daily truth. Every day there's like a little blog about something, you know, whether it be Wilhelm Reich or Royal Raymond Rife or Nikola Tesla, or labels on food and how to read them and whatnot. You know, there's a lot of different things out there. Or horsetail is full of silica and it pulls heavy metals from your body. I'm into herbs, a lot of things like that too, because they don't lie. Really, herbs don't lie. So I know I kind of roundaboutly answered your question, but you know, whatever gets you closer to God, which is also truth, is activism. And activism is like being in service, but not a hijacked one. So you have to ask yourself, like, am I, because people get all excited, like I'm out here with Greta and me and Greta are going to stop global warming. It's like, actually, you're sadly, and it's, you know, how do you tell these people these things? You know what I mean? Sadly, you're actually working for the devil, but you think you're not. So I don't know how to really tell you these things. But that's my answer, you know?
What your truth statement there reminded me of. You ever read Andy Andrews? I was listening to him speak in person once, and he was talking about the idea of truth. And he said, it's the truth, but is it true? And this idea of it all being subjective around, our truth and my truth and this truth, but is it true? And it was quite a powerful statement. And it makes you question just everything in our perspective. I mean, we're all coming at our own truth from our own perspective. And we all have different perspectives.
We do.
Yeah.
Definitely. And a lot of our perspectives are controlled perspectives
Yeah.
from childhood.
100%. Yeah.
And maybe those people that are controlling our perspectives are doing so for, their own agenda. And I think that's the consciousness evolution that we're all playing a part in right now, is realizing what is someone else's like opinion or lies being fed to us and what is actual real, you know?
So you talked about speaking with children that might not understand some basic concepts. What would you see as, your ideal utopian society right now, coming from where we are right now to, maybe that you got two parents that are, just doing the 9 to 5 and just trying to make it work and just, getting through the day, but still trying to raise their kids in a conscious way that where their kids aren't necessarily being spoon-fed all of these different ideas. What do you think are the next steps for our society to take when it comes to our kids?
Community resilience through community supported agriculture. So I think like get them dirty, get them out. If the parents are at a 9 to 5, they should be at the neighbor's farm building and growing and learning how to do things and getting dirty and growing food for the community. I think that on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, we need to acknowledge the importance of community resilience by getting to know our neighbor. And one of the best ways to do that is through growing food together. Like maybe we don't even know our neighbor, but next year you could be eating their potatoes that they grew and sharing the carrots that you grew with them and getting tomatoes from the other neighbor and sharing it with everybody. And then all of a sudden, just 3 families have created a movement because we all have these yards. I mean, not everyone, but I get it. Like there's community gardens that can be put in place. And I think there could be locally like a community ambassador that has like a gathering, whether it's a fire pit or whatever, like a central location people can gather. And we all need to come back to the way things were. In just my lifetime, we came together and we all watched the same TV shows, and then we all went out and played flashlight tag. And we weren't like so isolated and afraid of one another. Like it's just absurd. And it's primarily through the programming that has made us this way. But if we start just growing food and teaching the children that way, and then trade schools and whatnot. Like I think eventually we're going to have to create our own barter networks if we want to not opt into the demonic system, which is digital wallets and digital IDs and digital currencies and all that sort of stuff, which won't be in service to humanity. So we're going to have to figure out our own way. And what better way to create a barter system is to like have actual assets where you know how to do things, like know how to grow food, know how to have different trades and teach them. But I think the very beginning of that is one house grows potatoes, the next neighbor grows carrots, the next neighbor grows tomatoes, and then we all help each other and then get the whole block growing different things and trading. Even if it's just like, I've only got 4 carrots to share because I screwed up. Well, let's figure out what went wrong and you can grow more carrots next year. You know what I mean? But like, let's get it dialed in where we're all helping each other grow. And in that, now you've got something that's not a tablet or video game for the kids, and they can actually learn where the food came from and how hard it is to get it there and all those things. And that's a big, important first step.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So, is there any other topics or any other routes you want to take this? Anything that we've missed on or anything you feel like you'd like to share yet, Matt?
Well, not really, but off the top of my head, I do think it's important for people to realize how powerful they are. Everybody says, I can't make a difference. And then everyone just thinks that they can't make a difference. But I mean, one person can do so much. And then that can encourage other people, and there could be a domino effect. And, you could literally be the next whoever your hero is. You just have to start with one day at a time, you know? And as you take the next step, like the universe or God or whatever you believe in will help you You just have to align yourself with that mission. And I can't stress it enough. Like people are thinking, but what about my job? What about my peers? What about the ridicule for my peers? Because that's one reason why people don't speak up or become activists or do anything. They're worried about the scrutiny from others. But you never know who's already on the same page as you, and you just never waved your flag and let them know.
Right?
Like
Yeah.
you literally could have a neighbor who's right there with you, and you were too afraid to spark that conversation, or they're on the fence and they're ready to wake up, and like having you help them along would actually be very important in the evolution of the consciousness of the entire, field kind of thing. I encourage people to do what you can with what you have. If you can knit for truth, apply the skill sets that you already have, and even be willing to learn other skill sets, but do it in honor of truth. And if everyone does that, then we can actually step onto the battlefield to see where we're at and really win this war on consciousness. I know that we will win in time. I'm just worried that it's going to have to get pretty dark for people to realize what's actually going on. But I do see this light in every single person, and we can rise to the occasion. And I do believe that we will. And it starts with knowing how powerful the human spirit is. So I'll end it on this note. I have a big following on Facebook. It's like 150,000 followers. And anytime I say anything about soul or spirit, it gets zero. Like no one sees it. And I thought, oh, well, maybe that's a coincidence. It's got to be a coincidence. So yesterday I did this little video on Rudolf Steiner, and I wanted to like tell people about all these books that I have, and that I've got these Rudolf Steiner books, and that he helped children in these Waldorf type schools like understand that they have a soul. And I tried to upload this video to my Instagram and my Facebook. 3-minute video. Every time it was getting cut off at like 30 seconds. I tried over and over and over and over and over. And I literally was like, what is going on here? I rewatched the video. The video is fine. I rewatched the video regarding the content. And right when I talk about empowerment and the human soul, the algorithm just cuts it off. Like it's literally an algorithm that's designed to keep us in a low frequency, a limited bandwidth, a frequency of fear, not empowered by the fact that we have an eternal soul, and that our soul is here to serve a purpose, and that we can connect with other souls, like-minded, la-ti-da, and like change things. So the powers that be really don't want us to know how special and powerful that we really all are on a soul level. And that we have this like being within us that is indestructible, and that there is no fear, because that's all an illusion, but really they pull out all the stops, and I'm not even kidding, and it's not my ego or anything like telling this story. Like they won't let me even put it out on that platform because too many people could be reached, and that's because they're terrified of us, really. And that, I want to say one more thing. So why is there fluoride? Why are there LED lights? Why is there toxic like materials, polyester in all my clothing? I can't even find 100% cotton unless I go to the thrift store. Why is there chemtrails and GMO and all these things, and like the shots and all this? Like, oh my gosh, there seems like that there's an attack on humanity from every angle, an attack on literal consciousness. But why? It's because the powers that be are absolutely terrified of what we can become. And I want everyone to know that. And become empowered by that. Like, don't look at these things and be like, oh my gosh, I should be really depressed and in a fear-based state. Be empowered by that and be like, wow, they're terrified of me coming to realization of who I really am. That's got to get through to somebody somewhere, you know what I mean? And that really got me going at one point, because at first I was like, what am I doing fighting chemtrails? It's like an uphill battle, But then I was like, wow, they're really trying really hard, and I should be empowered by that. So I hope that other people can feel the same way.
Well, I, for one, am very thankful that you did, and that you're showing this example, because I think that as well, that we're all under such enormous attack on our potential. And once we realize it, it changes everything. So
Exactly.
thank you so much for this conversation, Matt. I feel like we could go so many other different conversations, and maybe one day in the future, but thank you so much. And I appreciate everything you're doing with your documentaries. Can you just tell us again here at the end of the podcast how people can find you, the exact things? We're going to have it in the show notes as well, but I just want this to be forefront in people's minds.
Thank you, and I look forward to doing other shows, and I appreciate you as well, and what you bring and your light, and for having me as a guest on your platform. People can find me on, please, Facebook, Matt Landman, which I'm thankful to still have that, even though it's censored. I'm still there. I can't say that for like my TikTok or my big Instagram or my YouTube channel, but whatever. Actualactivists.com is a nice place to find me. Frankenskies.com also, and Frankenskies2.com as well. And then the EMF Silver Protection clothing line is Spero, Spero, which again means hope in Latin and Spanish and Italian. It's Spero Gear, Spero Gear.com. And that's also the Instagram handle. And I hope that people can at least check it out. There's a great blog on there for important information, resources, and maybe you just want to bookmark it so that come Christmas, you've got like some cool ideas for gifting or something like that. I don't know. But I appreciate it and thank you. And I hope everyone out there, hope this message resonated with them.
I'm sure that it will, Matt. All the best. All right.